This is Martin Giles, the Guildford Dragon News, and as our series of interviews with leading candidates in the election for the new West Surrey Council, candidates from Guildford, I'm today talking to Catherine Young, who is one of the two R4GV candidates standing in the Horsleys ward. Catherine, welcome back to the Guildford Dragon, and thank you for giving
Thank you,
time for this
Martin.
interview. Now, originally you were a GGG member, and you won your seat for that party in 2019 at the Borough Council, and then you changed to R4GV before the 2023 election and have been serving as a borough councillor since for that there. And now you're one of only two R4GV candidates standing in the West Surrey Council election in the Horsleys ward, which used to be the Horsleys division. Why are there only two R4GV candidates?
Well, I think, Martin, what's happened over, a considerable number of years, people have moved on to do different things. I mean, I'm sure you probably know Joss, as our group leader, now chairs the Royal Surrey Hospital in St. Peter's. So he's obviously devoting his time to that. Other people have less time than they might have had to this because I think we all recognise it's going to be a really big challenge. But one thing I would say, there may only be two of us, but we are probably the two really experienced councillors that are standing in this. And also across the West Surrey Unitary Authority, there's about 25 independents standing at the moment, and we are naturally in touch with them. They've got very similar principles and vision as we have, and we'll see what happens after the election. So I don't really feel that Dennis and I are on our own, but together we are very experienced, both from a county and a borough perspective and a parish council perspective as well, and we're really determined.
Okay, but we often read that a lot of people are disillusioned with the national parties, and a local election, you would imagine, in particular, people might think, well, we want to vote for someone different. But here in Guildford, we haven't, the electorate hasn't got many choices, have they? You're standing there in the Horsleys, but other than that, there's an independent, I think, up in Ash, and one maybe in Onslow, but there's not that option for most people.
Oh, there are a lot of independents, as we found out, because we're now all linking up. So there are two really strong candidates in Byfleet, which is not too far down the road from me. There's a whole host in Farnham as part of the Farnham Residents Associations. So there's quite a few, and actually that's true across East and West. And I think, the leader, the main independent that I know is Catherine Powell, and she's the leader of the independent opposition at Surrey County Council. So I think, we do have a voice and we will have a voice. But I do agree with you, people are disillusioned. It's been, if you're in a smaller party and not a national party, it is really hard work to kind of make sure your name is up there, that you're involved in everything that's going on, which I think I've got quite a good reputation for. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's wrong, as I have read on one of the Conservative leaflets for Horsleys, for example, that we're a spent force. I can assure you we are not a spent force, because most of our current councillors or previous councillors are quietly working behind the scenes, like John Rigg with the in the Guildford Vision Group. And I happen to know he met the lead councillor for Regeneration the other day, who's the Lib Dem, obviously, and she hadn't been shown the Guildford Master Plan, and was unaware of John's work with all the flooding that's going on. So we are behind the scenes and we will keep chipping away. But yeah, I agree with you. I think some people are very disillusioned, and it could become very national, couldn't
But,
it?
but why can't you get more candidates then?
Um, well, we have tried. We have tried. And I suppose some people, the if you think about it, the independent people are the ones that are really involved in their villages and really care about the community. And if they are going to start seeing it as a bit, it's going to go nationally, I think they'd rather be working and doing what they do locally. So that could be one reason. I know that's the reason I've been given for a couple of people I've approached.
Okay. Right. Well, let's go on to what you're committing to do, as
Mm.
stated on your election pamphlet. First of all, local representation is one of the things you mention, and you say you'll continue to ensure democracy is kept local and you have a voice. So, what are you going to do to ensure that?
Well, I okay, so I think locally, I mean, I'm obviously very well known locally, and I'm Dennis and I both attend our parish council meetings. We are involved in our local flood forum, for example. So anything that I think we can get involved in locally, we will continue to do. And what I've done is, I mean, an example would be I've worked with the local medical centre to secure their funding from developers' money to help the expansion of the surgery. So I think it's about knowing what your local issues are, and then being a voice at the council to actually represent those. And I think if you've got the respect that I certainly have with officers, I know I can say that quite clearly. The experience that we've gained, we know that we can chip away. It's quite frustrating at times, but we can chip away, and eventually we do get things done. So, you've just got to be determined and be persistent in what you do. But I think that if you asked anybody across our division, or ward as it's now going to be called, and certainly in my current role as Guildford Borough Councillor for Clarendon and Horsley, does she get things done? I think you'll get a resounding yes.
Well, I don't doubt that, but it's going to be even more difficult in a bigger council, isn't it? Because, why is a
Mm.
Spelthorne councillor or someone
Mm.
from the, I don't know, Hazelmere going to be really interested in the detailed kind of local issues you're talking about in the Horsley?
Well, the one thing I would say about that, some of the issues we've got here, they will certainly have there. So, for example, flooding. Now, I'm was one of the founding members of our local flood forum, which is chaired by our MP, Zoe Franklin, and I sit right beside her through all of those meetings, chipping in the kind of local perspective, raising, things that we could clearly look at. And we are starting to see a change as a result of that flood forum. Now, there will be other areas across West Surrey that are experiencing those issues. So that's flooding. I think from healthcare, I mean, medical provision, that kind of thing. It's something I've got experience in. And I know it's going to be difficult. There's going to be 90 of us, providing I get elected, of course. You just don't know what it's going to be like. And it is going to be hard work convincing the likes of Spelthorne or Hazelmere that Guildford has got this particular need. And I'm not sure how that's going to work, whether councillors that are elected across Guildford and Waverley are going to be a voice for that part of the West. I mean, realistically, we're all going to have to work together because it's going to be a very
But
difficult time.
haven't you put your finger on a real issue there that we don't actually know what we're voting for? We don't know how this new council is going to be organised. So
Mm.
it's tricky for voters to know which
Mm.
candidate represents their interests best in their view, isn't it?
Yes, I agree. And there's a lot of people I've spoken to. They don't know enough about it. I mean, there's plenty on social media. We've all linked in with our leaflets to try and get it out there. And some people are
There's plenty on
disinterested.
the Guildford
Well,
Dragon.
I've encouraged people to read the Guildford Dragon. I'll just put that little
Thank
plug
you.
in for you. But people are disinterested. People don't think it's going to make any difference. People see the benefits of it. Two separate authorities eventually will become a strategic authority in a couple of years' time. And that will achieve cost savings. Of course it will, and it'll be
Well,
benefits.
will
There'll
it
be
though?
streamlined ways of
Because
working.
I looked this up about the cost savings in a report that's contained in the House of Commons library. It says unitary authorities, when they're created, find it very difficult to achieve cost savings. And if they are made, they're made in the longer term. They're not made in the short and medium term. So we're going through a lot of pain with this. There's a lot of uncertainty, and
Mm.
I'm sure we'll get on to the debt issue later. But um, I'm I'm not personally convinced that these cost savings are going to be realized very quickly, certainly in the short term or medium term.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Martin. It is going to be really difficult. And where are the cost savings actually going to come from initially? That's going to be really quite hard. But I have been watching so as you probably know, there is for both East and West, there is a joint voluntary committee at the moment made up of 6 cabinet members from Surrey County Council and each of the leaders for
Mhm.
each of the
Mm.
areas that are going to be
Preparing,
part of
preparing for
Surrey.
the change.
Preparing, and I've watched those online, and we've got a brilliant team of officers who are putting the framework in place. I agree, the West Surrey, whoever is elected at their first meeting is going to have to agree all of that. I mean, it's happening really quickly, and we know who we can thank for that. But at least people are doing as much as they possibly can to make sure there is a good foundation there on how the council might run, how the decisions are going to be taken place. What are the sort of first set of committees that you've got? So, as you know, the most important thing is obviously who is going to be leading it, the executive, but also for me, the overview and scrutiny. And as you probably know, I'm already vice chair of the overview and scrutiny committee at Guildford. So that does give you the opportunity to challenge what's going on, to kind of keep and hold the council to account. It's not going to be easy. I don't. Anybody that thinks it's going to be easy is mistaken. But I do think we've got a really good structure in place to be able to hit the ground running from the
But do you
start.
think it was a mistake to try and do it at this pace?
Yes, yes, I
Right.
do,
Okay.
because actually, it's quite difficult to say that because if we were going to do it, I am a person that thinks, right, let's just get on and do it. Let's not, I don't know, mess about with it all. Let's just get on and get on with it, because it was inevitably going to happen. And I have to say, one of the articles, you're going to get another plug now. Is it Bernard Correll? He
And a quarrel, yes.
wrote an article in the Dragon, which I actually found really interesting because I hadn't realised this, and I think it stemmed back to 2009 and the years of austerity when councils started to lose a third of their annual income. And he was saying that obviously the Conservatives had looked at a review of local government and how that might be organised. Obviously, Labour came in, carried on with it. And I think it was back in 2020, the leader of Surrey County Council, Tim Oliver, had put in an early request for this kind of two unitary, which just didn't get anywhere. It just people didn't seem that involved with it at that time. Then, of course, we get the cancellation of the elections last May. We get papers rushed in, and suddenly we're deemed the priority for Surrey, which hasn't given officers, councillors, anybody involved with it to to really have time to stop and think. You've got to get on with it and get on with the job and try and make it as best as it possibly can for the residents going forward. But yeah, I think it was rushed. I think in full council, I voted for 3 unitary authorities instead of just 2. Obviously, the cost benefits that we were shown as councillors showed a greater saving for 2 unitaries, which I can understand. But from a local representation, I feel 3 would have been better.
Yeah.
So
Now, sorry to interrupt, but you have a background you were Marks and Spencers, weren't you? You were
yes, I was.
senior in
Yeah.
Marks and Spencers. Now, you will be aware of how, any organization relies on its systems, especially these days, its information systems, its IT. Can you
Mm,
imagine how difficult it's going to be for West Surrey to operate when they've got
mm,
all the legacy IT systems of the six
yeah.
different councils plus Surrey County Council? You know, I just can't imagine. I was in IT in the Home Office. I can't
Mm,
imagine how it's going to be quickly brought together, and the cost of bringing those
mm,
things together is going to be
mm.
huge.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree with that as well, Martin, because frankly, our IT systems, I mean, I'm not an IT expert, but just from a user and different areas that I've been involved in the council, and that is quite wide. It's and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I think it's a bit of a mess. You know, there are lots of different systems that do lots of different things. And what we have seen over the last couple of years in Guildford, a
Yes.
lot more streamlining. You know, we
But I
don't.
mean, sorry, but the problem of systems not communicating with each other was one of the underlying causes, as I understand it, for the overspend and the massive
Yeah.
overspend on the contracts,
Yes. Well,
and that's
I'm
within
glad
one
you.
council.
I know. I'm glad you mentioned that, not me, because there's not a lot I can really say about that. But that is going to be a huge job. And to me, if we don't get that system side of things, procurement, where these are the sorts of things where you could see some cost savings straight away. An
Really? Do you
example
think? I
would
mean,
be,
you're going to have to bring in a lot of consultants, and they're not cheap
no,
to
I know.
work out how to bring these systems together. And I can't see that being done. It's not going to be
Mm.
done in months, is it?
No, it's not. And interestingly enough, there's another joint committee meeting coming up. And I think I'm going to ask some questions about that because to me, your bedrock has to be your systems, your procurement, those sorts of things to enable the council to run well.
Okay.
For
No,
example, I was just going to say one thing about, we are, I'm sure you're going to get onto the budget next,
yeah,
or the debt, shall we say.
yeah.
But one of the things is that we've got a red flag at Guildford at the moment under debt collection. You know, this is because people
Okay.
have moved on, residents, etc. So you need a really good system. Now that could be a system right across West Surrey that would enable that to work better.
Okay.
So it's
I'm
an
sorry, Kate,
example.
but we must get on, and it's my fault that we haven't got on further than we have. But I want to rattle through these. So concise answers, please. Infrastructure. You say we'll continue to press for the release of money paid by developers to deliver better infrastructure. Everyone agrees infrastructure is key to support the developments, however unpopular or popular they might be. But we haven't been able to do it. Um,
Mm.
your party colleague in Ash, Sue Wyeth Price,
Mm.
she has identified how much Section 106 money hasn't been properly spent. How are you going to be able to? How are you, as a councillor, going to be able to influence that? Do you think in the new council?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got a track record. I'm doing it at Guildford already. Sue and I work very closely together on this. As vice chair of overview and scrutiny, I've managed to work with the other people in the team, and we've had, for example, the integrated care board in to come in and account for where that money is and when it's going to be spent. And I think my persistence in doing that. And I've put in my leaflet, some of this money is moving now. We have enabled money at the medical centre, the money for police provision, because we've had quite a lot of local issues, has gone to the police. So we are with persistence enabling that to happen. And I would just, that is something that I will continue across West Surrey, because I'm sure if we're not getting the local infrastructure, and at the end of the day, that's supposed to come before the developments, and it clearly isn't, there'll be other areas. So hopefully
But you
people
should
will
be pushing
agree.
at an open door there, shouldn't you? The other parties, why wouldn't the other parties support any initiative on that?
Well, I think they will. I think they will
Okay.
because I think through Sue's work and mine, people are now, and because we've managed to get it onto the overview and scrutiny agenda persistently, I think every time they see us, we're thinking, oh no, we will just keep going at it because people are now beginning to realise it's there, it's millions, and it's not being spent.
Okay. Next, greenbelt protection. You say we're going to continue
Mm.
to fight for our greenbelt. Well, people might accept that you're going to fight for it, but it's a real uphill struggle, isn't it, under this government?
Yes, it is. I mean, we're really suffering because of the MPPF and the
Which,
changes
which
that
we
were
should say
made.
quickly has changed under this
Yeah,
government and made it more
and yeah,
pro-development.
yes, and also because it's an acronym, so it's the National Planning Policy Framework, which
Yeah,
is government led.
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So the key thing that affects the villages is the removal of the word villages to prevent the merging of towns. It does not mention villages. So effectively, if you speak to some of us, we see that. Does that mean
Mm.
the green belt is not sacrosanct in the
Hmm.
way it has been?
So the buffer
Um,
between these settlements is now
yeah.
perhaps less protected than it was.
Yes, so if you looked across the Horseleys, across Ockham, Ripley, those sorts of areas into Send, etc., there's loads of development. It just goes round and kind of brings it all together with very little green buffer between, the town in Guildford. So that is going to be hard. But the one thing, whether it's an advantage or not, I don't know. It's certainly hard work. I'm on the local plan panel and have been since 2019. So I've been working with these officers for a number of years, and we are kind of feeding in how to not change the policies, but make the policies really stronger when it comes to protecting the local area. But we've got an issue. We don't have that greenbelt protection. Your only fight for that is to prove that something isn't sustainable. And I was very lucky to get a planning application for West Horsley overturned at the planning committee and actually refused because it was in an unsustainable location. That was recently. And also your local character. That doesn't carry the weight it should do. It is primarily looking at sustainability, and that is hard. It is hard work. It is a challenge.
Do you? I mean, obviously, a lot of the control now is at Parliament, and it has been for a while. Um,
Mm.
do you liaise with Zoe Franklin as Guildford's MP on this?
I do. And actually, Zoe and I work, I would say, and I'm sure she would agree, very well together and very closely. So, for example, I mentioned the flood forum earlier. We were
And where does
talking
she?
about.
Sorry to interrupt, but where does she stand on these planning issues?
Well, I've asked all the parish councils to make sure that they respond to all the MPPF consultations. That's been challenging because a lot of what's the point? We've been here before. And then I've made sure that Zoe is copied on those. And I actually spoke to Zoe and said, will it help you in your fight in Parliament when you are speaking on this if you have local evidence to support what you're saying? And she said yes. So
Okay, so
that's the only way. Lobby.
yeah, so we're talking obviously about this election. So you are committing to carry on that kind of pressure and liaison to promote
Oh yes.
your policy. Okay.
Oh yes,
Next,
absolutely.
climate change. Now, you have been criticised by some Lib Dem councillors, I think, for your stance or for the party's stance on climate change. But you say in your pamphlet you're going to help your local communities to become climate resilient. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so first of all, on the first comment, I think the person that said that was actually inaccurate. I think he misinterpreted that because we have always had a member on the climate change board at Guildford, and former councillors like Deborah Seabrook, she was also on the board, and had done a lot of work locally. I've set up a local climate action network group, which is liaising with all sort of network groups across the village, which includes West Horsley Place. And we have run a series of events to ensure that residents are aware of what is climate change, what's it all about, and what can we do, each person, something small that we can all do to make us more climate resilient. I'm also the founding member, and it wouldn't have happened unless I'd agreed to help the East Torsley Parish Councillor, of our Repair Cafe, which has become so popular in terms of a community event once a month. And there are many other things that we are doing to raise the awareness locally, which obviously I would continue to do whether I was elected or not, because it's really important.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned scrutiny already, and you say that you're going to hold the new West Surrey Unitary Authority to account and campaign for openness and transparency. Do you think you succeeded in getting openness and transparency at Guildford Borough Council?
I think we have to a degree. I think, I mean, I'm known, and I think our group are known, that we will ask the questions. That's an advantage of being an independent councillor, of course, that, you have no party whip and you can ask those questions that perhaps others wouldn't. And I have to say, our mayor, who is just standing down, has always said to me, I can rely on you for common sense questions at the council, because you'll ask what people don't want to ask, or you'll challenge perhaps what people don't want to challenge. So, it's a very catch-all phrase, isn't it? But I think for residents, it's really important that they know what's going on, why decisions are being made, and how their views, their concerns and issues have been raised on their behalf.
But don't you think, I mean, my impression is that the culture of secrecy has survived to a large extent, because when council officers, I think, decide what can be said and what can't be said, I don't think it's always on the grounds of just public interest. It seems to be often on the grounds of what would be convenient for the council. And can you really change
Yeah.
that culture?
Well,
Why
yeah, I
can't,
mean,
I mean, it seems to me that too often the councillors cave in to the advice they're given from the officers.
yes, I can see that. And I think I have seen that, because actually I've learnt quite a lot working with Philip Brooker as the chair of Overview and Scrutiny. And quite often we're told there are legal reasons behind that, which, unless are proven otherwise to me, I will trust. I trust what our monitoring officer says and what
But
our
you can
legal
get different legal
report.
opinions from different lawyers, can't you?
Yes, you can. Yes, I guess you can, because they want to earn their money, I guess. But
Well, because everyone can interpret the same law different ways, I guess.
of course you can. I mean, I've seen that all the way through the 30 odd days of the Wisley appeal. That
Yeah,
was very apparent
yeah.
how people will pick and choose exactly what they want to say and how they're going to phrase it, or emphasis that they put on it. It's a tough ask. You've just got to keep asking the
Okay,
questions
but you're going to keep
and
pegging
build the
away at that.
respect. Oh, I most certainly will, yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, we haven't mentioned it specifically so far, but the council's going to start at the moment, as things stand, with 4 billion pounds worth of debt. How on earth can it
4.5.
4.5? But
4.5.
how on earth can it function like that? I mean, it's going to be bankrupt from the start.
Yes, a lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said that. And my personal opinion is this really should have been sorted out. It should have been totally, contracted. We should have seen the action plan from government in terms of how they're going to support it, because people are really nervous about that and what that might do
But
on
do
their
you find on
council.
the doorstep people are aware of it?
Not entirely, not entirely. People have picked up on, my council tax might increase, and they have heard about debt. They don't know a great deal about it. And we are having to talk to people about that. I think not everybody wants to be involved in it. So they want it all sorted. But nobody really knows how it's going to get sorted.
I mean,
And I
there's a
just think it. Sorry.
Well, there's a real problem here, isn't there? Because the candidates, are not, even when they're elected, will not be in control. You are reliant
Mm.
on the government to say how this is going to be resolved. So in the
Yeah.
meantime, you can't say what your position is on it really, other than hoping for the
Mm,
best.
mm,
And
mm.
and
Well,
so for the electorate, it means we can't. If one party said we're going to deal with it this way, or another party said we're going to deal with it that way, we could make a choice. But at the moment, we can't.
yeah, and that's why, people have got to be very careful here because some of the candidates' literature is promising things,
Yeah,
free garden waste or whatever, which
exactly.
immediately segregates those people that don't have a garden. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's one thing. Yeah.
a bit of a tricky thing to have said, quite honestly. And how are you going to do that? You don't know. And I think until we see bottom line, this is what the government have promised 500 million, haven't they? I mean, that's hardly going to touch anything. They should be ring fencing Woking, Spelthorne, Runnymede, so that our residents are not going to suffer as a result of that. And it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be difficult, but I don't think anybody can make any promises until you see it written down very specifically, see what services you must deliver. All the discretionary stuff, well, that's a really nice to have, and if we can, we'll work hard to make sure local areas benefit from things they have already. But at the end of the day, until we see it in black and white on the bottom line, whoever's in charge, but actually we all ought to work together on this,
Okay,
what it is and what we're going to do about it.
Catherine. Sorry, Councillor Catherine Young. Thank you very
That's all
much.
right.
We come to the end of our time. Thank you very much.
That's all right, Martin. Thank you very much.